Can I have anybody who worked on the film stand up as well? Levy, see Levy, active in the film. Round of applause.
I'm going to ask you the first question. I noticed that this says it was like adapted from a play originally, and the film seems so utterly cinematic and visual that it kind of threw me that it was from a play. So can you give me tell me how that developed?
Yeah, the play sort of came second, actually. The original idea was kind of inspired by, I started driving down to the end of every road, down to Terrebonne Parish, all the way down to the bottom, and I found this town, Pointe-aux-Chenes, Ile-de-Jean-Charles, Montague, this sort of section of towns that was right there at the edge, and sort of wanted to make a film about kind of the struggle of holding out and standing by your home in the face of disasters. And then what I was also working on the play as a separate thing. That was going to be a separate film, and what I sort of came to was that there was this kind of emotional parallel between a community losing its place and a little girl losing her father. And so that character story came from the playwright's life and her story, and sort of two projects that almost converged. And the characters and the tone and a lot of the kind of texture came from the play, but it wasn't the same story in any way. That play was set in South Georgia, so it was like a totally different thing that we completely reimagined to fit with the town where we were shooting the film.
Questions?
I have a question related to your question, which is, I wish I could think of more examples.
Could you stand and...
There was some really beautiful phrasing in the film, and the one example I can think of is at the very end when she says that she can see pieces of what made her flying around. And there were several beautiful phrases like that in the film. I'm curious to know if those were from the play or if the genesis was the film.
Yeah, it was an interesting process. I mean, we sort of finished. We got to the end of our script, and then there was a whole second wave of the process as we cast the film, where each actor who came into the project, we spent weeks doing interviews about the issues that the film were going to be about, and about kind of things, things like that, where and the language of the characters and sort of the way that the people who actually played the parts thought about things and would say things was all written in a second layer. So I remember that, like that phrase originally was Hush Puppy talking about the particles of the universe, and she was talking about particles all the time. And so I remember sitting down with Benh Zeitlin, who played the role, and saying, "What do you know about particles?" And she said, I had no idea what that means. I've never heard that word before. And so, I was like, well, what do you know about, what do you know about things that are tiny? And she's like, well, I know that there are little pieces of everything floating around. And when you look at, we were looking at some dust and light, and I said, how would you describe this? And she said, those are the little pieces that make up that build up bigger pieces. And so it was sort of like that, where we'd adapt kind of her own way of thinking into the language that, maybe pre-existed. And so that happened with every character. And what ends up on screen is really partly me and Lucy, and very much a collaboration with each actor that played the role, who reinvented the dialogue and brought it into their own, way of thinking and speaking.
Over here?
How in the world how old is this little girl?
She, when she came in for auditions when she was 5, and in the film she's 6.
Okay, big part of her life, 1 year.
Yeah.
How did you get a performance like that out of a 6-year-old? How does the director do that?
She's a magical creature. That's pretty much, certainly it was a ton of work, and it was a lot of, like I said, interviews and rehearsal. We rehearsed for 2 months of rehearsal. We really worked at it, but the core qualities that you see up there were things that she walked in with on day 1 of auditions, which was, you just rarely see it. Someone comes in and the camera's on them, and even when she doesn't know, when she's not saying anything, you just see the gears turning in her head, and whatever she's thinking about, what her focus was always so tangible and so strong. She emanates light when you're around her. I wish she was here right now. You totally understand. And she's nothing like that person also, so it's a total performance. She's very clean. She's very, watches Disney Channel, plays on her iPod all day long. She's a regular little kid. It's just, she has it. Sometimes somebody walks into your life and you know, you just feel like you were meant to find him. And that's, you know, she walked into a library in Houma, Louisiana. She's from down in Houma, and no one in the film, other than Levy, had actually interacted before at all. So that was sort of the case for every single person, where you just are kind of looking for not just a resume of, you know, this you know, find a little girl who's done 3 commercials or something like that. You're trying to find really special people who can kind of have the ability to bring their lives to a role. And so she was like that, and really everyone in the cast brought themselves into the movie in a way that is probably abnormal for what you normally watch.
Right here.
So you're saying that was her first time?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was everybody's first time other than me.
And he's my cousin, I'm very proud of him. But, so you or someone was in the library and just was looking, or you were?
Yeah, we did a massive casting search. No, sorry, yeah, I should have explained. We cast the film for 9 months, that role specifically, and we looked at about 4,000 girls in New Orleans and all across South
So
Louisiana.
she went to the library for that reason?
Right, she showed up for an audition, yeah. We didn't spot her reading Dr. Seuss or something like that. She showed up, yeah.
It was good, very good.
Her mom tricked her into going there, right?
No, it was, well, the auditions were for 6 to 9-year-olds, and so whenever she comes here and does the Q&A, she's very proud of the fact that she pretended to be 6 when she came in. Didn't say anything, didn't give it away, snuck into the audition, went out and was like, whew, they didn't catch me, you know, so.
Right here.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the journey from when you had it written as in screenplay form and how you got it made, like budget range, how you produced it?
Yeah, we had a really amazing sort of scenario for that. You know, I made a film here in 2000 and finished it in 2008 called Glory at Sea, and basically this company called Cinereach saw that film, called me up and said, "What do you want to do next?" Which is really rare, and to sort of make that even more amazing is that they're a nonprofit company, so they had no financial agenda as far as, you know, if this film makes a ton of money, they cycle that all back into other projects. And so, you know, you get to moments where in a normal scenario you're talking to a studio and you're saying, you know, Dwight Henry, I should mention, is the owner and proprietor of the Buttermilk Drop Bakery on North Dergenwash Street, which is a great place. So, you know, we found Dwight, our casting office was in the Colton School in St. Claude, and he was running, at that time, Henry's Bakery that was across the street. And so that's how we knew him, was just going in and getting donuts there. And you get to a point in your process where you're calling your financier and saying, listen, I know we said we were going to cast a professional actor in this role. We have 3 people that we looked at, but we're really leaning towards giving this role to Mr. Henry the Baker. And normally, you know, any studio would say, you know, go to hell. And they were like, that's what we want. We want you to use real people. We want you to change the way the films are made. And so, especially for a first-time director, we had an incredible latitude to make incredibly risky decisions, which is pretty amazing. So it's a real credit to them for being that brave and setting up a scenario where, you know, they give a ton of artistic flexibility to the filmmaker.
That's a good follow-up.
This lady here.
And how long in a process did it take you guys to discover that you wanted to use, you know, like raw talent?
It was from the beginning. I mean, you know, it was sort of the way that we made Glory to See the short as well. It was, you know, it was really cast in this grassroots way. We really wanted everyone from the film to be from South Louisiana. We tried bringing in actors from New York and Los Angeles, and the chemistry wasn't right. It didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel like, you know, we sort of used the lives of the actors so much and the texture of the actual film that people coming in who hadn't experienced what it is to live down here really couldn't. Like, it wasn't in their eyes. Like, you just could see that there was something fake there. And so, you know, that was always the idea. But that said, we thought there were a couple roles in this film that were too difficult, like Wink's role, like the teacher's role, that we thought we were gonna have to mix non-professionals and professionals. And, you know, local people just won those parts off of professional actors. So that was a scary and surprising thing, even for us, you know, to make those calls.
Right there.
What has been the response in other parts of the country and other parts of the world where this has been seen to the concept of the loss of land and community? We understand it, but does it translate readily to people who don't deal?
It translates in a really funny way. Like the further you go from here, the more people see this as a fairy tale. And you get to Europe, I showed it in Europe at Cannes, and it was like, which planet is this film set on? You know, like a total, and even when you go out to California, it's like, is this in America? Like no understanding of where it's set. It's really an interesting thing because for us, it's a piece of realism in a lot of ways. Like it has this heightened world to it, but it's that heightened world emerges from the character, of just the fact that you're watching through a 6-year-old's eyes, these events, but the events are all very real. But then you go away and it's like, you just get the funniest misinterpretations of just sort of thinking that this is some sort of, space, the weird, like, Mad Max, like sort of this idea that this is this totally post-apocalyptic vision that isn't set anywhere or tangible in the world. But the amazing thing is that people still get, which was a big part of the idea, is that we didn't want to tell the film kind of rooted in the specifics of the politics or the dates or the issues. We wanted to sort of heighten it and tell it as a folktale so that it could travel like that, and people can just watch it as a fable and still understand sort of that there's a message in the film about why it's important to stand by your people and your place. And so that amazingly translates in Poland, even though they think that they're watching, Snow White or something.
This gentleman here.
Can you describe to us briefly how Fox Searchlight and you came together?
Yeah, I mean, we finished the film 2 days before Sundance. I was piled into an airplane, woke up in Park City. We had our first screening, which I didn't really know what was going on, but we had caravans coming from New Orleans to Park City, so we had about 80 people from the crew in the audience in Park City, and we just had this amazing first screening that was so raucous, and we got like a standing ovation. It was this whole crazy thing that we didn't really know what was happening, and you just start getting called immediately afterwards. And we never in a million years expected, and we really expected to show it here. We expected to sort of organize grassroots screenings and down the bayou and all around Louisiana and take it on the road sort of ourselves. And then it was like all of a sudden you look up and you have these incredibly powerful executives staring at you saying, we're gonna play this film in San Diego. It's like, okay.
Gentleman back there.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the process that went from first being inspired by the town to end up actually shooting a film there, and kind of like what it was like when you were actually filming and what kind of response that you got during the process.
It was funny. I mean, I moved down there by myself, just sort of I sort of try to show up when I'm going somewhere that no one knows me or that I'm, not familiar with the culture. Like I tend to go down by myself. I don't bring a notepad, I don't bring a camera, I don't bring a tape recorder. And so I'm sort of like sitting around on the docks being totally out of place and getting made fun of a lot by, all the fishermen that are working there. We basically just were there for a long time. I was living at the marina down at the very bottom of the road on 664 for about 8 months. And so eventually you get, eventually you're like sitting there on your laptop writing your script and someone pulls up and is like, put that down, like, get in this boat, I'm taking you to learn how to, hunt alligators, and you get to do that, and you get to go over to dinner, and then we sort of built, and the whole time we're auditioning people, we're auditioning while we're writing, and so you're getting to know people in auditions, and it became like a real community. It wasn't like we were shooting there and then going back to a Marriott or something like that. We were living in people's trailers and behind their houses, and then there was a lot of people from down in Pointe-Chenot, both in the cast and in the crew, and so it was a real kind of grassroots. We tried to do things like they're kind of a grassroots community art project, and so and we had an amazing screening down there. It was like the Cinema Paradiso or something. It was really, really wild.
This lady here.
Was the boat operator an actor or was he actual?
The boat. Who gives her the chicken biscuit?
Yeah.
That's Jimmy Lee. No, he recently moved to Puerto Rico, but before that he was living on St. Claude Avenue, operating a speakeasy of sorts out of his house. And I think that there's currently, his door, he just left, his door is open, and it says, gone to Puerto Rico. Not coming back. And so if anybody wants some stuff, you can go over to Jimmy Lee's house.